Hey, it's Ethan Skolnick. Welcome to my starting nine, which you can find here every day, or excuse me, every single Tuesday and Wednesday on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure to catch the Dono Daily every single day. That's at 3:00 here on the channel. Also, check out the last episode of 5 on the Floor. It was on with Brady Hawk, also Alex Toledo and Greg Sylvander, and we went into the reasons we were impressed by Tyler Heroes to start this season. So we each had to pick one. We couldn't reveal it before we actually did the podcast, and all four of us came up with different things, although mine was sort of out of left field compared to the other three. So make sure you check out 5 on the Floor. Of course, the latest 3 yards per carry as well. If you want Dolphins content, that is our official Dolphins podcast. Before we get to the Heat conversation today, and we're going to be talking to our friend Marco Romo, who has his new Twitter account, which is actually his old Twitter account. It's kind of a time to celebrate here. We're going to talk to you about Everything Trade Shows. This is one of the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. You can find them at everythingtradeshows.com. You can see the great booths that they will design for you. They will do your rendering for free if you mention 5 Reasons. So if you mention 5 Reasons, they will show you exactly what it's going to look like. Look at some of the companies that they work with. Citrix here, one of the great local companies. Also, Microsoft and many, many others. If they can work with those companies, they certainly can be trusted with yours. Everythingtradeshows.com is where you want to go for the entire booth build from the beginning to the end. They also teach you whether it's better to rent or to buy. We know the trade shows are coming back all across the country at the convention centers. Businesses want to be out in front of people again as COVID starts to wane. So reach out to Chris Chase. That's our friend there, again, based right there off of Las Olas. I always have trouble with the phone number here because I muted myself. If you don't run a company, mention it to your boss, because certainly, again, trade shows is a place that you want to be right now because, I don't know, they might have forgotten about your company during COVID. So go to everythingtradeshows.com. All right, we're going to get into the Heat conversation here. We're going to talk, like I said, to Marco Romo at about 9:15. You can catch this on the YouTube channel. Everything stays up here all day. But I'm going to talk about the Heat in this context. I think when we looked at the schedule before the season, we sort of separate. I'm not on mute anymore, but maybe I should be. We sort of separated the Heat season into different sections, right? So when Greg and I and Alex were looking at it on 5 on the Floor, the schedule comes out and you're like, oh, wait a second. And it's kind of like you're going through it one by one. And you're like, wait, where's the break here? These first 14 games of the season, like, where's the soft team? Where is the Detroit, right? Where is the Sacramento? Where are the teams that are not really competing this year? Like, we knew before the season, like, there were a certain number of teams in kind of the top tier. We all sort of put the Heat in the second tier, if you were counting like sort of 5 tiers in the NBA right now. And, you were hoping that they could get to the first tier by the playoffs. But there were none of those 4th or 5th tier teams on the Heat schedule. Like, I mean, I think there was one soft game early. You're talking about Orlando, and that was pretty much it. I mean, you're talking about going to Denver, 2 against Utah, a trip to Los Angeles, which we don't know who was going to be healthy or not, but obviously that's not an easy place to play. With the talent that was still remaining on those 2 teams, the Clippers and the Lakers. Boston at home, which, again, they got off to a slow start, but it's Boston. Indiana on the road, a place that, they have Rick Carlisle's coach now, a place that the Heat never typically play well. There weren't a lot of soft games. Like typically you will see, okay, this is a tough one, but they'll get this one, they'll get this one, they'll get this one. And that's why Pat Riley kept speaking in his press conference, what I actually thought was unusual for him, because he doesn't really focus much typically on what I guess he would call peripheral opponents or outside factors. And the schedule is kind of an outside factor. Like, it's uncontrollable, right? I mean, it comes out. You can argue with the NBA if you want, but the reality is everybody's going to play a certain number of teams a certain number of times. It's just a question of where they fall in the schedule. But Riley kept talking about this. He never typically does this, right? And he kept talking at his press conference about, well, we got to get through that early stretch, right? We got to be mentally prepared for that early stretch. Like, he knew off the top of his head how many road games they had early in the season, which is obviously a point that was impressed upon the team, probably by Eric Spoelstra as well, right? How many road games they have, how challenging this was going to be, how they really didn't have time to kind of perfect things. They were going to be thrown right into this. Now, he didn't talk about the opponents they played in the first 14 games, but that was pretty obvious. You just knew, again, going through it, no break in the schedule. So now it's over. I mean, they still have tough teams coming up. They play Chicago. Washington's playing well, right? I don't expect that to last. But they're playing well. It looks like their reconstruction of the roster, getting rid of Westbrook, adding Dinwiddie has worked for now. But they're one of those teams that strikes me as, when it comes to February, I'll be like, what happened to them? And that has happened with them before, by the way, where they've gotten off to strong starts and faded. Cleveland's a team like that this year. Like, there's some young talent there, but I don't expect them to stay up where they are in the standings. Like, there will be an 8-game losing streak in there somewhere. But I'm going through the numbers as they get through the first 14 games, and although there were frustrations with certain things that happened, the 2 games against LA in particular, I think were winnable. The game in Indiana was winnable, right? Even without Lowry. But you get through 14 games, and Riley always talks about 20 games being the sample size where you kind of know what kind of team you're going to be. But in this case, like I said, I don't think we had to go to 20 because the first 14 were so challenging. And look where the Heat are. They're 3rd in the NBA in net rating. I mean, right now, Golden State is playing seriously, they're playing like Durant, Golden State, okay? 12-2 with a net rating of 13.1 positive. And that's without Klay Thompson back yet. Utah, 2nd in net rating at 8.9, but the Heat have beaten them twice, once without Jimmy. And then Miami at 7.4. And then following that, the Bulls, who have come together again quicker than everybody expected, I think. DeRozan's playing at a high level. They're a game up on Miami at 10-4. The Clippers, who did beat Miami, again, no Kawhi. I think they're one of the surprises of the season. Plus 5.3 net rating. The Suns have started to get it together, right? They had the slow, they didn't look so good the first 3-4 games of the season. Now 6th in the NBA in net rating at 5.1. Washington, as I mentioned, bit of a surprise, 4.8. Denver, 4.4. Brooklyn, without Kyrie, but Durant playing at an extremely high level. I don't know what the hell Harden's doing. Plus 3.1. And then Cleveland, one of those teams I think will fade, plus 2.4, followed by Philadelphia 2.0. And the Kings are actually playing reasonably well, even though they're 6-8, with a plus 1.2. But again, getting back to it, 14 games into the season, you're 3rd in the NBA in net rating. You've beaten the team ahead of you twice. And your schedule, I can guarantee it, and again, without going through everybody who Golden State has played and Utah has played, although there seems to have been some easy ones on Golden State's, I mean, your schedule has been at least as competitive, if not more competitive than those in terms of opponents and all the road games on it. And you haven't had Jimmy Butler for 4 games, right? Lowry missed 1. Markieff Morris missed 4. Why the hell did he miss 4 when Jokic missed 1? How does that work? Shouldn't Jokic have been out as long as Markieff Morris can get back on the floor? Strus missed a few. So you're talking about your best player missing 4 games, another starter missing a game, 2 other key rotation players missing 4 or more games. And again, you're 9-5 with a net rating of plus 7.4. And look where you are if you look at this individually. The Miami Heat are the 4th highest rated offense in the NBA. Utah, Philadelphia, Golden State, and Miami. We were talking about the defense early. Miami's still 8th in defense. But they are 4th in the NBA in offensive rating. Now, the most optimistic projections when we were on 5 on the floor, I think Greg said maybe he thought they could be 12th. I thought somewhere in that kind of 14 to 18 range. But that the defense would be top 5 so that it wouldn't matter that much. You would get enough offense. The offense has been better than the defense. Now, I think some of that is related to the fact that I think when Jimmy is not in, you actually miss him more defensively than offensively. And I think those 4 games have skewed the numbers a little bit. But still, anybody who's complaining about the Heat start to the season has no perspective right now. You got through it. You're 9-5. You've played at really the 3rd highest level in the entire NBA, and you beat the team that's playing at the 2nd highest level twice. Once without your star. So this should be a time that the Heat should start racking up wins. I think what's going to happen here, or should happen, okay, over their next 10, if you look at their schedule, and again, a couple against Washington, one against Chicago, but some soft games, including tonight against the New Orleans team that, they have Ingram, but they don't have Zion. They're not well constructed. David Griffin's probably going to get fired. They're already on a different coach than last year. That's not working out very well. And, this is a game Miami needs to win comfortably at home, okay, particularly if Bam or Jimmy are back. But you look at their next 10, there look like 8 wins on there. Because if the Heat just play to the level that they've played at in the first 14 games of the season, that will be enough to go 8-2 over the next 10. It really should be. Now, the Heat, right? I mean, every NBA team, but because they're the team you follow, if you're watching the show, you know them, right? There will be a game in there or two that they just play down to the level of competition. And also that there's some, random scrub Heat killer explosion against them, right? It's just a question of who it'll be. Who's it going to be tonight? We'll have to look at the list, but there are some options in New Orleans. So what I'm saying here generally is you should be very happy with the start. You should be. And we can lament again that they probably should be 10-4, 11-3. There's not really a win in there that I looked at and I was like, okay, that should have been a loss. But there are, again, the couple games in Los Angeles, and I was there. They had both those games under control, and Duncan Robinson makes a layup instead of Malik Monk making a 3 on the other end. They probably beat the Lakers, and the Clippers game felt in hand until it wasn't. But I just think that Heat fans have to have some perspective right now. You are through the worst of it. You're through the worst of it. And I think you're in very good position. All right. We're going to tell you about another sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network and of this program starting 9. And then we're going to bring on Marco Romo. But before we do, I want to tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. And that is BetUS. BetUS is, you can find them at betus.com or betus_official on Twitter. Make sure you're using the code word 5. I know that a friend of mine here on our network has a different code word, okay? Love him to death. Use mine. The code is 5, F-I-V-E, and then use his too. Tell your friends to sign up using his, but I don't even remember what his is because it's irrelevant. Well, I do, but I'm not going to say it. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Go to betus.com. This is the best live betting platform. Look, you bet a game beforehand and you don't really like the way it's going. You sort of get a vibe during the game. You can go the other direction. You can hedge. You can do the live betting. You can do the futures betting. I hope you got in that Tyler Hero 6 Man of the Year pick before the season. BetUS had great numbers on that, but they also do the futures on everything else. Okay, they got MLB futures on there right now. You can play the NHL. You can play the NBA. You can play the NFL. Dolphins coming up playing this Sunday against the Jets. You may want to bet that one. I haven't really looked at the number, but I believe they may be small favorites against New York. But go to betus.com, use the code 5, that's F-I-V-E, and you will get 125% bonus and not a ton of rollovers. So you will get your money quickly. They're a trusted platform these days. That is the single most important thing. Again, betus.com. All right, let's go to our friend Marco Romo. You can find him. Yes, you can find him. Well, there. Look at that. Look at that. Look at the Twitter account. You can find him. No underscore afterwards. Underscore in the middle here. Marco_Romo. You also can find his work on the 5reasonsports.com site. Shortly after we finish here, you can find his latest piece on Tyler Hero, which is a good compliment to what we discussed on 5 on the Floor last night. So make sure that you check that out. And Marco, I'm just going to start here. With a very simple question. Big picture now, we can get into the minutia of, well, this should have happened in this quarter or this, this possession or this game. But stepping back, taking the bird's eye view here, they're 9-5. They've gotten through a gauntlet in terms of the schedule. They didn't have their best player for 4 games, on a West Coast swing. They've missed their second best player for a couple games, their third best player for a game, and 2 of their bench rotation players for a significant amount of time. I feel like they're in good shape.
I think they are, but fans, there's no perspective with fans. It's always about the right now. And when you look back at what we heard at the beginning of the season, that the schedule was going to be for the first month and a half, everybody was like, we just got to get out of there 500 or above, and they're well above 500. And you have to also look at the way they played in that span. You want to have that defense there, and you want to at least have a average offense, which they've done more than that. And I think that defense still has room to grow. And I still think it's probably going to end up in the top three.
Mm,
With the way they stack up these easier wins coming up in the coming weeks or so. And as the season goes along and guys get to work with each other, switching defenses from mostly, a switchy D or a drop D, they can still work on some of that stuff. Brooklyn's had problems like that. They've had
mm,
trouble with their switching defense because it's a lot of communication.
mhm,
And Celtics, you can see the fruits of the labor that the Celtics have done. They perfected their switching defense almost, and it's been so good for them that it's kept them at 500 because their offense is below, like, I think it's bottom 10 now.
mhm.
So you can see how much a good defense takes you. And I think with Miami, we just had to have more perspective on how this is a long season. This is only barely a month we're into right now.
Let's go through the top of the sort of the net rating charts here, because you mentioned, that again, the Heat defense I think will finish likely top three. Right now it's number 8, but you're right. When they start playing weaker opponents, that number should start to come down a little bit and they'll rise in the standings. But I just want to go through with you because you also are one of the hosts of Full Court Press here on the network. And let's look at some of the teams that are up there, in net rating right now. You tell me what you think is sustainable. Okay. Uh, Golden State is a plus 13.1 right now and 12-2. I mean, I'm not guessing that is sustainable, but like, is there overall play? Like, I mean, did we anticipate this?
I didn't. I thought they were going to be good. I thought there would be their high ceiling was fourth seed. Home court advantage. The second half of the season was really where I was going to watch them because whenever Clay was going to come back, probably near the All-Star break, I was going to be, yeah, this is going to be when they take off. I didn't expect them to start off this hot. And when you watch them, though, it reminds you of how they were before Kevin Durant got there, and
Mm-hmm.
even when Kevin Durant was there, just with no Harrison Barnes anymore. It's Andrew Wiggins in that role. And Klay Thompson isn't even there, which is surprising to me that they're doing this without him. He's one of their best defenders. You don't know what it's going to look like on that end when he comes back, but he's still going to be the same sniper that he is. So when you're looking at the Warriors roster, you're not overly impressed. But there's just the way that somehow they play together and the way they feed off of Steph and Draymond. And their defense is really probably the one thing I look at that's sustainable. They have just guys that are all around good defenders all across the board, outside of maybe a couple handful of guys here and there. But it's really a lot like a Spolster team where
Mm-hmm.
the weaknesses are really well hidden, and the guys that are really good are jumping out at you from the front. From the front.
Yeah, their defensive rating right now is 98.9. I mean, that's much better than their sort of dominant dynasty like years. But I'm looking at the defensive rating. Stan Van Gundy made this point yesterday on Twitter. So I was just looking it up here. If you look at the top 10 teams in defensive rating, Golden State, Clippers, Denver, Washington, Chicago, Phoenix, Cleveland, which has been a surprise, Miami, Brooklyn, and Boston, all of them have 500 records or better. The only one who's not over 500 or at least 3 games over 500 is the Celtics. So, I mean, the defensive teams have kind of ruled here early in the year. Again, I know the rule changes have maybe made things a little bit easier for the defenses, particularly against certain players, but that is interesting. But let's go through a couple of the others. Utah is second in net rating, 8.9. Of course, that includes 2 losses to the Heat, one of which came without Jimmy Butler, and the other, Miami handled them like for pretty much 45 minutes until the last 3 where everything kind of collapsed and the Heat escaped. What's your view on the Jazz?
With the Jazz, I don't know. When you follow them on Twitter, their fans are not overly impressed with them. I'm not either. But they find a way to get regular season games like over with. They know how to rack up these wins because they have enough guys out there that are good enough. They're very Spurs like in that way. Which is funny because Quinn Snyder implements a lot of the same system
Mm,
that Coach Pop does in terms of what they do on offense. They're also trying a lot of stuff out. They remind me a lot of Milwaukee last year, where they were experimenting with different defenses, different offenses. They were really doing a lot of playoff prep work before really any of us noticed. So if you watch them closely, you'll notice they're experimenting with a lot of stuff. Jazz fans themselves are very much in the wait and see mode. They're very impatient as well as Miami fans are. But they know what kind of team they have, and it's very interesting to me that the Jazz are doing the Bucks, sort of thing that they're experimenting with all this stuff. I think it's smart because everybody knows who you are in the regular season. It's just about the playoffs for them, really.
Yeah, and it's about Gobert staying on the floor once that happens. So basically, if you look at net rating, because the Warriors and Jazz are out west, the Heat are actually first in the East. And the two teams that are just below them, they're going to see in the next week. So like when I talk about the schedule softening up, it does, but you still have some challenging games on there. You've got Chicago at 10-4, fourth in the NBA in net rating. You've got Washington at 10-3, seventh in the NBA at net rating. Which, in your view, is a more legitimate possible contender in the East?
I probably lean towards the Chicago Bulls. The Wizards, we actually talked about both these teams recently, but I think with the Wizards, I think they're a nice little regular season team that annoys people. They're very much a Miami Heat type of team from, let's say, 2016 with Dwayne Wade coming back to the fold. Not the 15-16 team. It's more of whenever Dwayne came back. And Goran. There's just a lot of very average guys that you can play in the regular season, and they're going to play hard and that's really where they remind me of Miami a lot, those teams, because they play hard every night, and they annoy any team that's not ready to come out. I think you'll see, there's also charts that I saw the other night where their expected field goal percentage compared to their actual field goal percentage it's not on the same level at all. That sort of stuff is going to come down to earth, where Miami's, they're going to get their shots better off because their shot profile is actually pretty good. So you'll see some of those numbers really start to even out. With Chicago, I don't think there's anything they're doing out of the ordinary for a team like that. I just think they have a good defense. And DeMar DeRozan's having a career year pretty much. And I don't think that's sustainable, but I think he can at least get to that level because he's improved over the past few years with the Spurs that I don't think people really noticed.
No, I think so too. It was sort of out of the shadows, and a lot of the talk about tomorrow was about the idea that they played better with him off the floor. But I think a lot of that was he was out there with Aldridge, who was kind of unplayable in a lot of situations, and so those numbers got paired together. I want to come back with Marco on some specific Heat things here, and then two teams in the East that have not lived up to expectations. You look at the teams in the East that are negative in net rating. I think there are two that nobody expected to be there. But before we do, I want to tell you about another sponsor of the Sports Network on this chat and this particular program. And this is a new one, okay? And this is one store. You got to check them out. If you're tired of like GNC, seeing the same products there all the time, nobody really helps you with anything or any of the other chains. This is where you want to go. It's called Intense Nutrition. It's based in Coral Springs. It's funny. Once they signed up as a sponsor with us, we had a bunch of people on Twitter like, "Oh, I go to that place." It's right. It's one of the strip malls in Coral Springs. It's not far from where the Panthers currently train. Right off the University Drive. You can find their Facebook page. It's at Intense Nutrition. Again, Intense Nutrition. Also, their Instagram page. They're gonna have a new website up here soon. But again, if you have any questions about them, ask me. But they will stack products for you. This is, again, if you got pre-workout, post-workout, recovery type stuff, anything for wellness, they handle it over at Intense Nutrition. And also, they can connect you with a local gym too, and get you involved that way. So we're going to be doing a lot more with them. Again, David Dwork's going to have a new program here on the YouTube channel covering the Panthers, and they're one of the sponsors, so David's going to be involved with this as well. But just go check the place out. Again, it's in Coral Springs, right off of University Drive, and it's called Intense Nutrition. You can see all the products that they have there. But again, if you're looking for something different, a more personalized approach, more customized approach to you, this is where you want to go. It's not to one of the big chains. And again, they've got one store in Coral Springs, but they're going to be expanding because they've been so successful. So go to Intense Nutrition on Facebook, and also it's IN_nutritionFL on Twitter. All right, Marco, let's get to it. There are two teams in the East that I'm scrolling down, okay, and we're enough of a sample size to kind of get an idea, although there are sort of extenuating factors with all this stuff. But the two teams in the East that are below in terms of net rating that I just don't think we anticipated, the Bucks at -1.8 and the Hawks at -1.4. Now, I know kind of what the Bucks' excuse is. They haven't had Middleton a whole lot. Holiday's kind of been in and out. Brooke Lopez has been in and out. What's Atlanta's excuse?
That's my thing. When I watch them, they're very confusing. It's a lot of late game stuff when you watch Atlanta. They're not very well organized at the end of games, and it's not really a pecking order thing. They know it's going to go to Trae Young. It's just the execution isn't there, and it's very ugly to watch the way they kind of really get bogged down at the end. Not to make a Bogdanovich joke, but it's really weird considering how good they kind of were at knowing how to get the ball to Trae Young in spots last year. The rule changes have kind of affected that. Maybe he's not looking to get the same shots as last year. But yeah, I think for Atlanta, it's a lot of late game execution, and whenever they're not getting the sorts of same shots that they were last year in terms of the corner threes, because they were really good at manufacturing corner threes last year, and they've had trouble really with some lineups as well. DeAndre Hunter's now out for the year. It's really the same story as last year when they started off bad and DeAndre Hunter was hurt. But except this time, the coach is different.
Right. The coach did such a great job last year. And Milwaukee. You look at the bottom. This is interesting. The bottom 8 teams in net rating, 6 of them are out west. The only 2 that are not are Orlando and Detroit. And those are the only 2 teams below the Bucks in net rating in the Eastern Conference. Like, is this just all the injuries?
I think you can't blame it all on injuries. I know how important Brooke Lopez is. He's one of their most important defenders. He does so much for them the way they funnel offensive players into him. But they're really confusing when you watch them. The way that they kind of wait around for Giannis to do everything is not really what they've always been known as. They've been known as a team that spreads the ball as much as they can and has enough talent around Giannis. The Middleton stuff, it really hurts them in terms of late game stuff to get a shot. Middleton was always good at that. He was always good at just getting a shot off, which Milwaukee has kind of had a rough time with. It's very similar to Miami's late game struggles where they kind of don't know where to get the shot at times and it kind of bogs down their offense. Except Milwaukee can't lean on their defense, which has been kind of underwhelming for me this year. When you watch them, I think they're still kind of fine there, but I think they still have a lot of room for improvement. I don't know how much is the finals hangover. The Suns started off rocky, but they've looked fine ever since. I think they won 8 straight. For Milwaukee, I don't think they have that same excuse if the Suns don't have that excuse.
I think the big takeaway here, as we look at some of the teams that are at the top, and again, teams that are playing reasonably well, like Washington or Cleveland, is that this thing is there for Miami. I don't think there's any question. I think if they can get it together, you look at the way they came out of this start at 9-5, the home games coming up, the easier games coming up. I think, to me, the games against Chicago and Washington, in some ways, are statement games to kind of say you're not in our class. I think things have gone about as well as you possibly could have hoped, again, in light of the injuries, the schedule, and everything that's happened. All right, I want to get his story up, so we're going to go Marco_Romo. That is the old Twitter account that is new again. So it's going to have, you have to reinvent it in some way. It's got to be fresh content. So we'll give you a column to promote here in the next few minutes. Check out 5reasonsports.com. Check out our sponsors, Intense Nutrition, everything trade shows. And of course, if you're going to BetUS, use that code 5. Have a good day.